We're ready to start painting in some hair. So what I've done is I've actually cheated a little bit. I brought in my clothing layer from the finished piece. You can see it's in here, and there's some blurring on the edges here, which I did to soften up those edges, which make more sense with the background in front of them. But I've created a hair layer that is called hair front because it's the hair in front of her skin. I'm going to have a hair back for her ponytail later on. Um, the hair front is behind the clothing because the clothing's in front of it. What I'm going to do to start this off is with hair, you always start with the darkest version of the color. So I'll hold my Alt Option. There we go. Grab a really dark color because hair is made up of layers. So the stuff on the inside is always the darkest. And I'm going to enlarge my brush. Sorry, I had my caps lock on, so I couldn't see what size it was. Now, at the first, I'm going to go through and I'm going to paint this area solid. Be careful with this in the sense that I want to have some clear areas near her skin tones where I can see through the hair. But this is all going to be solid stuff, so I'm not going to worry about this at all. I'm not going to worry about the edges. So now we're going to get to some edges. I'm going to go a little bit smaller so I can create some clumps. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to turn on my pressure opacity and my size pressure. This way, when I go through and start putting some hair strands in, I get some variety. So some of them, they'll be partially transparent, which I'm okay with because I'm going to build some up here. And I also want the hair to change with size a little bit. Now, if I'm worried that, this is still kind of really close to my edge, and I want to go back to solid, I can do that because I can still build in some more stuff. But I like having the slight variation in the size. It just makes it feel more natural. You can kind of see it tapers off at the edges here. Now, by the way, what I can do, this is kind of a cool trick. Do you see this hair right here, which is actually behind her forehead? Watch this. I'm going to build this up, and I'm not too worried about getting the exact outline I have. I just want a sense of this being the sort of like flyaway, a little bit fluffiness. And I'll build up onto this some more here in a second, but what this is cool. I come down to my skin layer, okay, and I command click the picture of the layer, which selects everything in the layer. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm using my Alt and my scroll wheel, but you can use Alt and plus, and then I can use an eraser, probably a smaller eraser than that. There we go. And I can only work within my selected area, so I can just go through and go, you know what, I don't want this to be here at all. So I can basically trim that edge because that's actually behind her head. I'm cool, hit Command D, and come back to her hair layer. All right, so that's a cool little trick for trimming some stuff off. So I'm back on her hair layer. I go back to my brush, hit B, and I'm going to start putting in some strands here. Now the trick with hair is you need to make it the same length and the same direction that it really is. This is where the smoothing comes in nicely. Here, I don't think I need to be quite that close to the edge here. If I have a couple gaps showing through, that's cool, but I still don't really need the really thin stuff. And then I'm going to go back to a thin brush. Understand this is going to take you some time. That's just the way it is, okay? Good stuff takes time. So I'm going to build this up. If I have some gaps that are too large, I will fill them in a little bit later. But what I want is I want a sense of pieces of hair with skin showing through it. Don't be afraid if you've got some outliers. I mean, realistically, you're going to have some. So like I can actually intentionally put a couple in out over here. This is where I might go back and put my pressure back on. So these become a little bit lighter. Hair is generally so thin, it's translucent. So it's okay to have some pieces that light shines through them because guess what? Light shines through them. Here we go. And you can see how I kind of build that up. All right. What we'll do later on with this is that we'll go to lighter versions, and I'll just do this really quick. I would go to an Alt and say, okay, I'm going to add some texture in here, and I'm going to build them some lighter pieces. And I can throw in some idea of like highlights and stuff like that, where hair is maybe picking up a little more sunlight or has been sun bleached or they've had highlights in their hair or whatever you want. If I want to, I'm going to go back to a little bit darker to give myself some subtle variation in texture over this really, really dark base. But the big thing to remember with hair is that you are going to build from darker to lighter on the outside because the inside strands are always shadowed. All right, and I would just kind of build that up. Just so you can see it here as I'm building up, I paused it and I added a sort of like a medium dark layer. I'm going to go lighter again. Actually, I'll go down to here. And finally, you can see I've gone through and put some other highlights. And I might even go a little bit lighter with that in a couple of places just to sort of pick up that sense of these areas being lit up a little more to give just a little sense of shape and some more higher value contrast to make a couple areas pop. But you don't want to do everything exactly even. You want to have some variety in there. So there you go.